Dear friends, English literature, romantic poetry, William Blake selected poems from Songs of Experience. Nurse's Song, Holy Thursday, London. Brief questions with answers. Nurse's Song. Question 1. What kind of nurse is the nurse of the Songs of Experience? Answer. The nurse of the Songs of Experience is dutiful and conscientious. Question 2. What were the children doing? Answer. The children were playing and whispering. Question 3. Where were the children playing and whispering? Answer. The children were playing in the green field on the hill. Question 4. What reminds the nurse of her joyous younger days? Answer. The whispering of the children reminds the nurse of her joyous younger days. Question 5. Why does the face of the nurse turn green and pale? Answer. The face of the nurse turns with sorrow over the passing of her hopes and desires of her youth. Question 6. What does the nurse feel jealous of? Answer. The nurse feels jealous of the young children's happiness and joy. Question 7. My face turns green and pale. What does green and pale suggest? Answer. Green suggests joyous jealousy and pale sorrow. The nurse is sorry for her youth is past as she feels jealous of the children. Question 8. What does the nurse ask the children? Answer. The nurse asks the children to come back home. Question 9. Why does nurse ask the children to come back home? Answer. The nurse asks the children to come back home as the sun has set. Question 10. And the dews of night arise. What does the dew symbolize? Answer. The dew symbolizes materialism or the worldliness of the people. Question 11. How, according to the nurse, are the youthful days of the children wasted? Answer. According to the nurse, the youthful days of the children are wasted in playing. Question 12. How are the youthful days of the children replaced? Answer. The youthful days of the children are replaced by evil winter and dreadful night. Holy Thursday. Question 1. How is the title Holy Thursday ironic? Answer. There is a controlling irony in the title of the poem. The holiness of the day cannot be honored when this scene represents such an unholy situation. By implication, what we see is not holiness but hypocrisy. Question 2. What is not holy thing to see? Answer. In a rich and fruitful country, children are reduced to misery is not holy thing to see. Question 3. What is meant by the usurer's hand? Answer. The selfish patrons of the charity school are called usurer's hand because they are motivated by self-interest rather than love and pity. Question 4. What is usury? Answer. Usury is the practice of lending money for profit by charging interest on it and therefore getting back more than you lent. Question 5. What is called a rich and fruitful land? Answer. England is called a rich and fruitful land. Question 6. What does the sun in Holy Thursday stand for? Answer. The sun in the poem stands for the caring attitude of the patrons of the charity schools or of the country. Question 7. What do you know about the playground of the charity school? Answer. The playground of the charity school does not provide any pleasant features for the children. The field is bare. It implies that nothing grows in the field. That is, the world of the children is barren. Question 8. With what the paths of the children are filled? Answer. The paths of the life are filled with thorns, which represents their misfortunes. Question 9. What kind of life do the poor children live? Answer. They are doomed to live in eternal winter of neglect and flight. Winter is everlasting in their life. Question 10. What does winter symbolize? Answer. Winter symbolizes hopelessness. Question 11. What does the everlasting winter in the life of the poor children suggest? Answer. The everlasting winter in their life suggests that there is no hope of eliminating their misery. Question 12. What is a land of poverty? Answer. England is a land of poverty. Question 13. In what sense is Britain both rich and poor? Answer. Britain is both rich and poor in the sense of social and economic injustice and inequality. Question 14. What is the significance of Blake going from a rich and fruitful land to the land of poverty? Answer. It provides contrasting ideas. Question 15. Why, according to Blake, there is no need for any charity towards children? Answer. Blake says that there is no need for any charity towards children because England is self-sufficient. According to Poet, charity is unnecessary because England is fairly prosperous and she can easily provide as much food as the children require. Question 16. What do the sunshine and rainfall refer to? Answer. The sunshine and rainfall refers to the blessings of God. Question 17. How does Blake end the poem Holy Thursday? Answer. Blake ends the poem with a note of hope that if the philanthropists of society are sensitive and sincere towards poor children, it can eliminate their misery. Question 18. What does Blake criticize in Holy Thursday? Answer. In Holy Thursday, Blake criticizes religious hypocrisy. Question 19. What does eternal winter mean? Answer. Eternal winter means everlasting periods of death, coldness, and decay. Question 20. What does traveling song refers to? Answer. Traveling song refers to the songs of fear and misery. Question 21. How does Holy Thursday of the Experience version different from that of the Innocence version? Answer. The lines of the Experience version are shorter, more exclamatory sentences and interrogatives, and there are also no rounded rhymes. London. Question 1. Wander through each chartered street. What does the chartered street mean? Answer. The word chartered means free or privileged. So the chartered street means the street which enjoy the freedom granted to it by a royal charter. Question 2. What is the Thames? Answer. Thames is a river that passes through the city of London. Question 3. Where does the poet Blake wander through? Answer. The poet Blake wanders through the free streets of London and by the river Thames. Question 4. What does Blake notice when he moves through the streets and by the Thames? Answer. When Blake moves through the streets and by the Thames, he notices the marks of weakness and of misery on the face of each person he meets. Question 5. Which enjoy freedom in London? Answer. The streets and the Thames enjoy freedom in London. Question 6. What is meant by the mind-forced manacles? Answer. The mind-forced manacles refer to the fetters or chains imposed by the man of authority. Question 7. How many social evils are attacked in London? Answer. There are 3 great evils of society are attacked in London. Question 8. What evils of society are attacked in London? Answer. In London, Blake attacks 3 great evils of society: callousness of society, adversity of war, and lust. Question 9. Why does Blake hear the mind-forced manacles? Answer. Blake hears the mind-forced manacles in the every cry of man and infant, and in the every voice and in every prohibition. Question 10. What is a chimney sweeper? Answer. A chimney sweeper is a young boy who was sent up a chimney with a brush to sweep away the soot that had accumulated on the inner walls of the chimney. Question 11. Why does the chimney sweeper cry? Answer. The chimney sweeper cries for the hardships of his work. Question 12. What is the attitude of the church towards the cry of the chimney sweeper? Answer. The church is not indifferent to the cry of the chimney sweeper. It feels shock and anguish at the miseries of the chimney sweeper. Question 13. What is meant by the blackening church? Answer. Blackening church suggests the corruption prevalent in the church, like the soot creeping over the church building. Question 14. What does the miserable life of the chimney sweeper suggest? Answer. The miserable life of the chimney sweeper suggests the callousness or cruelty of the society. Question 15. What is the condition of the soldiers as mentioned in London? Answer. The soldiers are helpless. The blood of the dying soldier flows down the walls of the palace as they fight to protect their king and his palace. Question 16. When is the call of the prostitute heard? Answer. The call of the prostitute is heard at midnight. Question 17. Where is the call of the prostitute heard? Answer. The call of the prostitute is heard at midnight in the streets. Question 18. How the youthful harlot curse. What is a harlot curse for? Answer. A harlot prostitute is a curse for the loveless marriage and for the child she gives birth to by her harlotry. Question 19. Why is harlot a curse for a loveless marriage? Answer. A harlot is a curse for a loveless marriage because an unhappy or loveless marriage causes the husband to seek physical pleasure elsewhere in the arms of a young prostitute. Question 20. Why is the harlot a curse for the child she gives birth to? Answer. The harlot is a curse for the child she gives birth to because it will have no future in the world, being an illegitimate child. Question 21. What is meant by the marriage heresy? Answer. It means marriage which is living death because of the husband's venereal disease contracted by his contact with a prostitute. Question 22. Who are Blake's types of oppressed characteristic victim in London? Answer. The chimney sweeper, the soldier, and the harlot are Blake's types of the oppressed characteristic victims. Thank you friends for watching my video.